All right, so I'm going to start with a few questions. Okay? First of all, if you had a choice to make friends with either one of these two guys, who would you want to be friends with? Would you want to be friends with the guy on the left or the guy on the right?
The right one.
Or if you had a choice of being friends with any of these two ladies, which ones would you want to be friends with? The one on the left, the one on the right?
The left one.
The left one, okay. Interesting observation. All right, another observation.
Oops.
How do you buy a product? What is your decision to buy a product based on? Is it based on emotion or is it based on logic? Because the first process obviously is logic. You're out of something, you're out of milk, you're out of detergent. That's logic. So what's the logical thing you do? You go to the supermarket and buy new detergent or a fresh can of milk. But what drives you to buy a particular brand of milk or brand of detergent is essentially emotion more than logic. Unless, of course, there's a sale and you're getting buy one, get one free. All right, so one observation is that human beings are highly social creatures. Agreed? Why? Because we believe that everything should be done after consensus. Nobody does things in isolation. Very few people do things in isolation. Human beings they always like to be closer to other human beings. An example would be, you imagine if you go to a not so popular restaurant and there's lots of empty tables and you and your wife or your partner or your friend go and sit in one corner of the table. So what happens when somebody new comes to the restaurant is this more than likely they're likely to find a spot that's closer to you. Maybe one or two tables away. They're not going to sit all the way in another corner of the restaurant. Unless, of course, they're on a secret date. That's a different thing. Right? So what we're trying to prove here is that human beings like other human beings. We humans are not meant to be in isolation. Right from the dawn of civilization, we've moved and we've lived together in groups. Okay? So another observation. Computers do not solve problems. So a lot of the times people say that computers solve problems. In a way, yes, it's true, but not entirely, because it's the humans or human beings that program those computers to solve problems. We put in algorithms, we put in commands to help those computers solve problems. And more often, these computers cannot solve emotional problems. They can solve simple problems that rely on simple logic. If case A, then scenario B, and so on and so forth. However, humans solve problems. Human beings have the innate ability to identify a problem, to try and analyze what the fastest, the quickest, the best way to solve that problem is, and in most cases, the ability to fix that problem. In most cases. Right, so these are all human traits. And today what we're going to talk about is how to humanize our brands, how to humanize our companies. Okay? Are you guys with me so far? Yes?
Yeah.
A bit louder? I can only hear Fred. I want to hear more voices. I know lunch is just around the corner in case you want to get refilled. So don't worry about it. You're gonna get to eat to your heart's content. So, number one, switching from selective hearing to active listening. What does that mean? So, as marketers, a lot of us talk about data and analytics. I'm sure the speaker after me, Tamer, is going to talk about data and analytics and the importance of data and analytics. And as a digital marketer, I truly believe in data and analytics. However, that is not the be-all and end-all. That's just one tool. What marketers miss nowadays is because they're too busy listening to the hashtags and the mentions and how many followers and how many likes and how many tweets and retweets and posts and so on and so forth. These guys, marketers today, are too interested in all those numbers. They forget about the emotional side of the business. They don't listen to the emotional side of the business. They miss out on this. This is basically vital information that you can use for campaigns. This is vital information that you can use to build your brand, to start engaging. Everybody talks about engaging. And one great, fantastic way to engage with your customers is identifying with them. Okay? So if you want to deliver real value, you need to understand not just demographic information. You don't need to know just their gender. You don't need to know just where they're coming from, their geography, what their interests and hobbies and desires are. You need to understand their behavioral patterns. You need to understand, if you're marketing to a housewife, you need to understand what time of the day she wakes up, what's the first thing she does in the morning after she sends the kids off to school, when's the time she gets to browse the internet or check up on her Instagram profile or update her Facebook page or tweet. When does she watch television? When does she go shopping? Because only then will you be able to do the right kind of targeting. Right, number 2, build communities, not platforms. So everyone seems to be obsessed with social media, correct? Everyone's on Facebook, everybody wants to tweet and retweet and post pictures of the fantastic steak they had at this really cool steak restaurant on their Instagram page. But the essence for everybody, especially for marketers to remember, is that it is not, you have to target the people, not the platform, the people. Because if you notice, how many of you remember High Five? Raise your hands, please. Anyone remember High Five? Anyone remember Friendster? MySpace? All right. All these companies or all these websites died. But the people that used them did not die. They just migrated to another platform. MySpace users moved over to Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, and the same with Friendster and the same with High Five. So the essence here is to target the people that use the platform and not the platform. That's the bigger picture. Your marketing should add value to their lives. I believe Dr. Abdullah Dosri said in one of the previous presentations, if you want to know how penguins behave, you need to go to them. You need to sell stuff to the penguins. Basically, what I'm trying to say is, you need to practice empathy. A lot of people today have already talked about empathy. What is empathy? Anyone? Fantastic. Absolutely. Empathy is trying to put yourself in the other person's shoes so that you can experience and you can understand what their likes, what their dislikes are. So it's not about finding ways to interrupt people. Right now, advertising is all about interruption. Everybody wants to get in your face. Jonathan earlier talked about this cocktail party example, which is fantastic. It's amazing. The idea for true social media marketers or true social media scientists to succeed is to find something mutual. Always try and find something mutual to start talking about. You can't just go and start pushing your ads or your commercial messages out to customers because they're not going to be interested. They're going to get turned off, which is what most brands, 90% of the brands, not just in Kuwait, 90% of the brands worldwide commit the same mistake day in and day out. They just push out commercial messages talking about me, 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 and me. Familiar so far? I'm going to give you the example of, I'm going to go back to the example of the cocktail party that Jonathan talked about earlier. Okay? You need to understand that customers really, honestly, they don't care about your product. They don't. Brands make the huge mistake of thinking that customers can't live. They can't live without my product. They have to buy my detergent. They have to buy my soap. They have to buy my phones. Honestly, people don't give a crap. They really don't care about your product. They care about what benefit your product brings to them. If your product does not benefit them the same as, if product A does not benefit them the same way as product B, they're going to go to product B. So the only way you can anchor yourself to your customer is by creating lasting relationships and lasting impressions. And how do you do that? They say the first impression is extremely important. Going back to the cocktail party example. Imagine you, like for me and Fred, we're having a conversation, and then a guy just walks over and he says, hey, listen, my name is John, and I work for this company, and you should buy this product because it's the best. That's scenario one. And scenario two, imagine another guy comes up to you and he says, Fred, you look familiar. Do you have a twin? But the idea here is, see, by the way, if you look at human psychology, this is one of the ways people break the ice with people. There's few tricks that everyone uses, knowingly and unknowingly. The first trick in the book is, if you want to try and break the ice with someone, you go to him and say, excuse me, you look familiar. Have we met before? That's the first trick. The second trick is, hey, I'm a friend of Fred. You know him. We met him at last week's party, or we met him on the yacht 3 months ago. 90% of the time, the other person is forced to talk to you. What is he going to say? No, I don't want to talk to you. No, because you mentioned a mutual friend, a mutual acquaintance. So the idea applies to this, to social, to humanizing your brand. You have to try and find something mutual. For instance, if you're targeting a small business, let's say with a website building product, or SMS marketing or whatever, if you want to target, let's say, a cupcake shop, they're not a big company. If you want to target a guy that fixes bikes, if you want to target a photographer, the first thing you need to go and start doing is start making conversations based on his interests. Talk about photography. If you're selling cameras, don't talk about your cameras. Talk about pictures. Talk about his pictures. Love that picture of yours on, I don't know, K2. Or the last time you went to Switzerland, was that Switzerland? Wow, you take amazing pictures. That looks like a postcard shot. Compliment him. This is how you build relationships. This is how you start conversations. You're never going to... What's going to happen if you start talking about your product is he may buy from you once, and he's never ever going to buy from you again. However, if you build a relationship and work on kind of just adding some fuel to that relationship, and nurturing that relationship, that's when you will build a customer for life, not a one-time customer. So, four, practice the art of being Flawsome. What is Flawsome? Does anyone know what Flawsome is? Flawsome is basically the amalgamation of two words. It's flawed and awesome.
Yeah, I wouldn't say awesome.
Yeah. Everybody likes awesome. It's like a very loosely used word, you know. But this is something that has been coined by a bunch of marketers maybe 5-6 years ago. It didn't really catch on, but there are a lot of companies that are actually executing their work in a Flawsome manner. What is Flawsome? Brands that are brilliant despite having flaws, despite having faults. See, imperfection is the new perfection. Perfection is overrated. Agreed? Perfection is overrated because every time you find out that there's the perfect girl or the perfect guy or the perfect car or the perfect phone, a few days or a few weeks or a few months later you'll find out that there's something wrong with it. So perfection is overrated. Okay? However, in the branding world, it's the brands that recognize their imperfections and turn them into advantages that ultimately win. Okay? And those brands, the essence of those brands revolves around honesty. Again, on empathy, on understanding customers and their needs and their wants and their desires. On generosity, on flexibility, and on humor. These are the traits. These are some of the traits of being a Flawsome brand. All right, so I have 3 examples here. The first example is, I don't know if you guys have heard about this. In 2012, there was a FedEx employee caught on video dumping a shipment. So you see he walks out of the van, there's what looks like a PC monitor, and he throws it over a fence. And that was caught on video, and it went viral. It's FedEx. Their main job is delivery. Can you imagine your horror when you find out that your packages are being tossed around like that? By the way, this is just one. They have a few videos out there of employees actually tossing products into a truck that also went viral a few years later. But how FedEx reacted to this was so very different from what normal companies do. Normally, what would a company do? What would you do? Okay. What else? Perfect. Okay. But what FedEx did, you're right, everyone's right, by the way. But what FedEx did was they went beyond. Not only did they punish the guy who did it, they fired him immediately, but they put out a press conference. Their VP of Human Resources came online and he said that we are extremely sorry. This kind of stuff, this kind of thing never ever happens in FedEx, very rarely happens at FedEx. We're extremely sorry about it. And they fired the guy and they launched a campaign called Absolutely Positively Unacceptable. And they started using this video. FedEx, by the way, they themselves started retweeting this video and they put it out on YouTube. But Instagram wasn't popular back then. This is 2012. They put it on their Facebook, they put it on their YouTube, and they put it on Twitter. And they started using this as part of their induction training for new employees for what not to do as an employee. Now, when this went viral, when the whole effort of FedEx went viral, that's when they started getting positive traction. Because then people realized, okay, so this is not a company that just says, oh, we're taking care of it and we're appalled and we're disappointed with our employees. They fired the guy, so they nipped the problem in the bud, and they're using that as an example for future employees. So they're setting a precedent, they're setting a standard, and they're showing people the standard that they're setting. So that's transparency. Example number 2. There was a telecom services provider called Vodacom in South Africa. And they had one day of mobile outage. No mobile service. So people went on Twitter and they started complaining, oh, you guys are useless, I can't use my internet, it's down, it's bad, they just got a lot of negative feedback. Okay? And some people started saying that we're sending messages to the CEO and to the chairman and to the top management, and they seem to be ignoring us. So their CEO actually took to Twitter in the middle of the day and started tweeting himself. The CEO of Vodacom, which is #1 South African company at the time for telecom, he took to Twitter. Not only was he tweeting about the whole incident right from 3 in the afternoon till about 11 at night, okay, but he actually, in one of his tweets, he actually told one of the customers, hi Mark, I'm not ignoring you, I'm working on making you smile again. A little bit of humor. Now, most people, when they see this, they're not, if it's the CEO who's telling you this, what else can you do? You're going to appreciate it. Now, maybe not entirely, but at least you'll appreciate his effort. Lastly, Ruffles. We can still share this, by the way. Ruffles had a problem in Brazil 5 years ago. Okay, so people were complaining that there's not enough chips in the bag. We still complain about that right up till today. Everybody says, oh, there's not enough chips in the bag. It's full of air and compressed air and what have you. And that, apparently somebody, I don't know what it was exactly, but somebody put out a video opening the packet and showing that there's only 10 chips in there, and it was an outrage. And that went viral. So what Ruffles did, or the parent company Frito-Lay's, we know them as Lay's here in Kuwait, what they did was they released this infographic. And this infographic showed that the air in the packet actually acted as an airbag to protect the chips while they were on their journey from the factory to your mouth. It's a long distance, absolutely. And it needs protection. So this actually turned from being a negative into being positive. That actually got free advertising. That got over 1 million likes and tweets. It got 1 million likes on Facebook, on their Facebook page, on the Brazil Ruffles page. And people started talking about it in a positive way. It actually also increased sales slightly. So can you imagine that? A little bit of negativity turned into positivity and turning eventually into sales. So, lastly, drive conversations whenever you can. I can hear the rumbling in your belly, so I'm going to breeze past this very quickly. Drive conversations when you can. What does that mean? Good social marketers, their main objective should be to convert people into buyers eventually, but all along the way building a relationship that's based around conversation in whatever way possible. Right? So one way, and this is becoming a bit of a trend, the thing is right now there's a lot of content out there. But unfortunately, or fortunately, to stay relevant, marketers still need to churn out more content. And it's extremely difficult. Nay, it's actually impossible to churn out content on a regular basis. So the other option, if you want to stay relevant and if you want to stay in the face of business, is to look to your customers and look to their content. So user-generated content, or UGC, is basically a way you can actually get customers to contribute towards your content. Less stress for your content development people, less stress for you as a marketer. But what it does is not only does it gives you some breathing space in terms of developing content, but it also works as an additional tool for SEO. So you guys know how SEO works, right? SEO works, very simply put, as search engine optimization is basically a system by which search engines, essentially Google and the Bings and the Yahoos of the world, trawl the web looking for indexed information, indexed content. So this example proves that the more content you have, the more outsourced content you have, whether it is on your site, whether it is on your social media pages, or whether it is on your customers' social media pages, the more content you have, the more chances there are of other people finding you through this content. So it's a win-win. And also you give your customers the satisfaction of contributing. Your conversation should drive everything. Or maybe the other way around. Everything should drive conversation. Obviously, your products and advertising are going to drive conversation, because if those are not driving your conversation, then you're doing a very bad job. But apart from that, your customer service should drive conversation. Customer service is really poor in Kuwait. Agreed? That's the truth. Customer service is really poor. It is not up to standard. Needs a lot to be desired. So your customer service should be designed around promoting conversations. Conversations about your brand, conversations about your industry. Your recruitment process. Funny enough, recruitment, people don't think this is a serious matter. When you apply for a job in a company, the first impression you have is of that person on the other line calling you and identifying herself or himself as, hey, my name is Barry, I'm calling from Future Communications Company. I'm with the HR department, we're interviewing you for a job, so-and-so title, can you come in sometime next week? Nobody does that. I bet you 9 out of 10 phone calls that you will get will be, sir, is this Muhammad Jamal? Yes, we want you to come to meet so-and-so tomorrow. There's no introduction, there's no follow-through, there's nothing. And even after a customer is selected, there's no follow-up process. And all this is actually part of the branding process. It's not direct branding, it's actually indirect branding. People don't get it. It's very crucial. So that as well drives conversation. Conversation about your brand, conversation about your product. Finally, your packaging. If you have a physical product, your packaging should drive conversation. Ask engaging questions on your packaging. It's not just about talking about your features and your benefits and your specifications on the product and the ingredients on the product. It's also about engaging questions being asked on your packaging, whether it is a carton, whether it's a box, whether it's bubble wrap, whether it's a plastic bag or a paper bag. Ask them questions. Ask customers questions. Keep them mystified. Keep them guessing. Evoke the curiosity factor. All right? So, last slide. We should try advocacy-driven marketing. What is advocacy-driven marketing? Anyone? Okay. So, this is the old model, which is basically the me first, which I think a few of the previous speakers touched on. Companies keep talking about me. My company is the best, my product is the best, you should try it, we're giving you discounts, we're best price, best features, best specs, best location. It's all about them. And they worry too much about pushing out products and services like tomorrow is the end of the world. Okay? And what's happening here is most companies try to control the brand. And you know what the truth of the matter is? As unaccepting as this is for most of us, we as brand owners and brand managers are not 100% in control of our brand. Who's in control of our brand? The customers. They're the ones that make the decisions on whether to buy the product or not. In fact, they're the ones that make the decision of whether to recommend a product or not. And that is coming to advocacy. That's basically advocacy-driven marketing. You're creating a network of advocates for your product. You're creating a network of evangelists. What is an evangelist? An evangelist is somebody who speaks for a brand or for a product. An evangelist, in some cases, as has happened with us a couple of years ago, an evangelist is someone who will fight for your brand with a customer, with a potential customer, or with somebody that wishes ill to your brand, because he is so invested in your brand. He's not on your payroll. He's not an employee. On paper, he has nothing to do with your company or with your brand. But because he's had a positive experience, either by a product or service, because he's had something positive, and he believes in the brand, and he's passionate about that brand, he is willing to go to war for your brand. And this has happened in many cases in Kuwait. This, in fact, happens on a daily basis on social media. It happens on Twitter, it happens on Facebook, when customers, a select bunch of people will start dissing a brand, and then you'll have the loyalists who are not part of the company. They'll come in and they'll defend the brand because they believe in the company, they believe in the brand, and they believe in the product. So this is what we should all aim for. We should all aim for making people talk about our products and services. And in the end, building lifetime relationships. So one last question, after so many questions. Are you guys ready to humanize your brand? Yes? Yeah. I like that. Thank you very much. Any questions? Yes?
Evangelist means the same, similar to brand ambassador?
Absolutely. Yeah. It's brand ambassador, evangelist. Evangelist was a term that was made famous by Guy Kawasaki. Do you guys know Guy Kawasaki? He's actually an Apple brand evangelist. He was an official evangelist on the Apple payroll until maybe 15 years ago or 20 years ago, and then he left. But he still calls himself an Apple evangelist because he was so invested in the company from the early days. You know, way back when MacBook 3 and all those products were being churned out. He felt so invested and so close to the brand that he continues, to this day, he continues calling himself a brand evangelist. Any other questions? Thank you very much. Please give yourselves a big round of applause. Thanks for me. Thank you.